Hi, this is Dennis Dempsey. You are listening to the Faith in Humanity podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Faith in Humanity podcast. This episode is going to be a little different from our normal episodes, and not different in format sense because I will be interviewing someone, but it's going to be different because the guest I am interviewing is no longer going to be really a guest after this episode. I'll be talking with my cousin Mike Carr, and Mike Carr and we have had fantastic conversations through and through just about all spiritual and religious matters, and I've always benefited from our discussions. I find them incredibly interesting and just really thought-provoking, and has helped me grow in my understanding and to really even understand myself, my understanding of the world, and kind of made me think about things differently. So because of those fantastic conversations, I actually asked Mike to help me out with this podcast, to kind of join me, either be a co-host on some episodes or maybe just be a support and in other episodes, as in helping me brainstorm ideas or coming up with questions or even maybe getting guests, just really kind of come alongside and help me on this journey. Because if you have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I had a co-host in the beginning, and then because of medical issues, he had to drop out. So, and I've been carrying it on my own, but I just think it's so much better to be able to have someone to bounce stuff off of, and especially, he may see things that I don't see that could add a whole nother layer to my discussion. So I think it's only positives can come from Mike joining the crew. So we decided, in order to introduce him, I would interview him and kind of get a baseline of where he's at, what he's thinking. And he kind of interviews me too, asking me questions and challenging me a lot. I mean, there's a lot of times that he's challenging the way that I'm thinking, really turning the way that I'm thinking on its head, and kind of making me look back at myself. And it's a really fantastic conversation. I'm excited for you all to hear it. It's a little bit longer than our normal episodes, but to be honest, we actually had to cut it short towards the end. I was kind of like, oh man, I'm running out of time right now, because we could definitely talk for hours and hours about this subject. So I think it's a great conversation, and I am excited to jump right into it. But before we jump into the discussion, I just want to do the announcements up front. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube by searching the Faith in Humanity podcast. You can find us on Twitter at TFIH_podcast. You can also email us at tfih.podcast@gmail.com. And if you have a minute of your time, could you just go onto Google, Stitcher, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, and give us a rating, preferably a good rating. That would help other people find our podcast. So without further ado, please enjoy the show. So, Mike, we're going to have this kind of a two-way street interview going on right now, which is a good idea because I've been wanting to have an interview with someone, or someone interview me. I interview someone else that's a host. That was kind of an idea that the last host, Sam, had, and you are going to be the new host, which I'm really excited about. And so we're just going to have this kind of open discussion, see where your baseline is, see where mine is. Honestly, I kind of needed this to really reflect on all the people that I've talked to, because I feel like my mind has changed through this process. Even as short of a process as it kind of has been with, I've only been doing this for a little over a year, but I feel that I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of really interesting people. So it's kind of good just to reflect on everything and kind of organize all my thoughts and everything. And talking to someone always helps me do that. So so I'm looking forward to talking about this, but just as to talk this through and have this conversation with you. But just for the record, you are my cousin. Your mother is my father's sister. That's how we're related. And it is true. Yeah, and I just feel that I asked you to help out with the podcast. It's something that I've been wanting. I've been wanting someone to help me out with this for a little while now. I had a host when I first began this, and then there were some medical issues that he had, which there's a podcast about. There's actually, if you go back, I forget which episode it was. I have to upload it, but we do discuss like everything that happened. So he had to end up dropping out, but I wanted to continue, of course, doing the podcast because I love these topics and the discussions that I had with all my guests. But, you know, it's a lot to do with just one person. And it wasn't as enjoyable because I like to be able to bounce ideas off of someone. I like someone else to, you know, come up with ideas and someone else to be there on the interview with takes a little bit of pressure off me. And also it helps with sometimes or every time someone will see something or want to ask something different than I see. So it's always good to have someone else. So I'm glad that you want to join. And we've always had I think really great conversations. I've always enjoyed our conversations about things related to the spiritual realm or just religious ideologies. So or philosophy in general, really. So I'm excited. I'm excited to have you on board. I did write down some questions, just kind of kick off this discussion. And I think it will go in different directions because that tends to be what happens when we talk about stuff. So, but I'll just kick it off, and I have some questions in case, there's a lull or something and we need to pick up the kind of jumpstart the conversation still. So let me start with, just start with the first question, if you don't mind, and then kind of, we'll unpack a little bit about you through the questions, hopefully. So my first question for you, and we grew up, pretty close to each other. I mean, we didn't obviously grow up in the same family, but we are related. And we grew up probably, probably like, what would you say, half an hour away from each other. You were in Allendale, I was in Closter, and
yeah, about that.
Yeah. So pretty close. So I'd say we spent like, I don't know, a decent amount of time together growing up and everything. But I feel like our upbringings were very different. I grew up, and I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, I grew up in a very fundamental Christian family, not just like a religious fundamental Christian family, not just like, oh, we go to church every Sunday and you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to, not just like structured in like the practices, just like doing the practices mindlessly, but it was like, you have to be living this. I almost feel that there was a bigger influence on Christianity than probably on education or any other aspect of life. I don't know if you got that, and that's not me criticizing my parents or anything. It's just,
no, of course, it's just saying it's your perspective on it. That's all.
Yeah, exactly, and it's no criticism at all. I mean, they did a fantastic job. They did, I really did have a happy upbringing. But they were just very serious. So. I mean, I think that was very apparent to the cousins and everybody else in the family how intense my parents were. I think it was just recognized. It just was like a reality. I'm sure that you've been witness to plenty of times from my mother for sure. But so my question for you, because I grew up with that mindset, and not just like religious, like on the surface where you just kind of go through the motions, but like it was like you need to have a personal understanding of Christianity and what they would call the Christian community, like a personal relationship with Jesus. So like all my life, I grew up thinking about these things. It was just drilled into my head. That's like what we did. Actually, I remember for a really long period of time, my mom I would like write down questions about the Bible, and we would sit at night and just like, she would like answer them, and we'd go through the Bible and try to find answers to them and everything. It was like, I don't know how many months or years that was, but so it was like kind of drilled into my head to always be thinking about these things. But so on your end, because my family was so overtly religious and spiritual, I didn't get so much of the same idea from your side of the family. Not that I'm saying that they weren't, just like they weren't just overt about it. So when do you think did you start really thinking about these ideas? And if you were a kid, or maybe when you first started thinking about the spiritual realm on a serious level, because I feel like a lot of people can go through, especially go through their lives like knowing that it exists and kind of thinking about it, but not really letting it sink in, especially in like the United States where I mean Christianity is like I mean, I almost feel like it's a standard. Lots of people just go to church mindlessly. And it's just kind of part of this part of the culture. And like people don't really think about it deeply. But I think that you're someone that thinks about it deeply. So do you remember when that curiosity began and what did that curiosity look like?
Curiosity in regards to in regards to faith and stuff, or just the spirituality side of things.
Yeah, faith and spirituality. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
We went to church. I mean, as early as I can remember, we started going to church every week, and you know, we weren't, and that was more so than the people who went on Christmas and Easter, and but at the same time, it wasn't. It kind of stopped there. As long as we went to church every week, and we went to CCD classes, and that was pretty much it. Outside of that, it was just you didn't really think about it too much. You just went to your other stuff, school or sports, whatever it was, But it was so every week you had about an hour's worth of church, and then trying to think. I guess it was through 8th grade. You had like an hour's worth of CCD classes.
What's CCD?
Once a week. I just like kind of you could just I don't know. You call it like a Bible class or something. I mean, it was basically like after school kind of, occupy the kids for an hour, and if we could talk about the Bible, great, and if not, just let's get through this so the teacher doesn't get a headache. It's really about it. But I mean, yeah, that's and I wasn't too like heavily influenced, I feel like, by church, and even my dad's. We weren't like it wasn't crazy religious, but my dad's uncle was a Monsignor in the Catholic Church, and I know his side of the family was from what I understand, like quite a bit Irish Catholic, and they take church pretty seriously, and faith seriously, as with along with some, well, whatever, but. And then I don't know, from what I understand, I guess, like my mom, your dad, I guess they went to church every week. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you.
But like them growing up, if they were, yeah. I feel like it's probably a standard. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I feel like that's the American way. It's just like go to church. That's just what you do on Sunday mornings, typically, especially.
Yeah, no, so like I always kind of knew, and I don't even know if my dad went to church a lot. I just knew that they were, they just took Catholicism seriously. And then as far as like our parents go, I don't even know if they went. I mean, I would assume they went to church, but. And then when I think, my parents had kids, I want to say it was more my mom who wanted to push church every week. But again, it was also, like you said, it was just kind of the pressures of the norms of society. It was like, we're going to go to church every week. And then, but, because then I feel like as I got older, like towards my teens, like the pressure or the focus on it just kind of seemed like it receded a little bit. Like it wasn't a high priority, if you will. But so going to church. I mean, to go back to the curiosity thing, going to church was like you just did it, and you heard the readings, the Gospels, all this, and I mean it resonated. Not from my memory, for me, not to a large extent. I mean. I guess the biggest thing it did was just kind of create this picture, this image, this concept of God, if you will. And but in retrospect, thinking back then, it kind of felt very segregated from me in the sense that you hear about this God, which makes sense. Okay, this God created everything, the world and life, and but then it just related to all these archaic people, from thousands of years ago. So it seemed a little impersonal. It was more like just going to like a story circle, and just listening to stories, and then you would extract, lessons from it. And that's really, I don't know, for me, that's all church really was just learning stuff from a different angle, and it mostly had to do with morals and values and things like that, life lessons. And then I didn't really start to feel like a tie to spirituality until, I don't know, kind of really through, interestingly enough, kind of through science and just learning about like the micro and the macro aspects of things, on a scientific level, be like, the quantum levels of things. And I remember when I first, going through school, middle school, high school, you learn about like the atom and stuff like that, protons, electrons, all that stuff. And then I remember, I think I was a senior in high school when I was watching a TV show with my dad, and it was talking about the atom and not who discovered it, but long story short, it was just talking about how, the components of an atom, the subatomic particles, they're not really matter, it's just energy. So you kind of, if you look at it like a linear chain of information, it's like, okay, the building blocks of life, atoms are the building blocks of matter, they're in everything you see around you. And then if what makes atoms isn't really well, I don't want to say matter, but it's just energy. Proton is just buzzing energy at whatever frequencies, and that kind of opened up, new doors in my mind, because it was like, well, if everything is made of these atoms, but they're not really stuff, it's more just this energy that's buzzing. It's like, well, that kind of built the idea in my mind of there's just this the concept of how everything's connected. It's just a web of vibrations and different vibrations that interact with one another. Sometimes harmoniously and sometimes dissonantly, and that was really kind of where that was where it started, I guess, being just aware of the quote unquote spiritual side of things, if you will, because I don't. No, but the whole church side of spirituality. I think church only. I think church only like skims the surface when it comes to spirituality. It doesn't really penetrate fully for me. It teaches good lessons, but really, when it comes to the all-encompassing idea of spirituality, church really just is really just like a small little step in the process. I think just living life itself is what's going to teach you about spirituality.
Yeah, I like that. And we're going to get in a little bit into organized religion a little bit later on, because I have some questions about that I want to pick your brain about. But just to recap, so pretty much you grew up Catholic, but you never felt a connection. Sure, it laid groundwork of kind of laid the foundation of some positive ways of living, positive attributes in your life, characteristics and stuff like, yeah. But the connection to a God or the spiritual realm really just wasn't there, which I think that a lot of people get. It's just like they see.
No, there wasn't a connection. It was really just like putting the word out there and just saying there is this God, and making me aware of that thing, whatever it was. That's really all it did. I didn't really connect with it. I remember actually one of my CCD teachers, or she was affiliated with a church. I can't remember her role. I remember her name though, but she was talking about how, with different churches, he's like, sometimes I walk into church and just feel, the presence of God, whereas other churches I just don't. And I was kind of like, well, I have no idea what you're talking about. You lost me. Like, you just walk into a church. Some of them are big, some of them are small, some of them are old, some of them are new. The whole feeling. that was completely, I thought she was like bonkers.
Yeah.
Whereas it makes sense now, I guess, that I'm older. I can kind of put some insight into what she was saying then, but at the time I was just, I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I grew up, and that's like what they would probably call the Holy Spirit, right? One of the big things of Christianity is like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is like God within you, and that's kind of like, I guess, your gut feeling, that feeling of, oh, I feel Christ in different places, or like I feel passion or love. That's supposed to be Jesus, or supposed to be God in you, and that always was strange to me because it always seemed so ambiguous. I always thought like, or subjective. It's like, okay, so you go into a building, you feel God's presence, but are you just like maybe in awe of the beauty of the building? Because there's certain ways that architecture and art and music are meant to give a rise of emotion to someone, right? That's like what they're made to do. So when people hear, I don't know, worship music, or when they go into into a grand cathedral, or, this stained glass windows or something, that can cause a rise that may be interpreted as the Holy Spirit, but not necessarily is. Maybe just some sort of emotional reaction that you have that's meant to be drawn out from you through the arts.
Right, for sure. And I also, like you saying that makes me think, now that I'm older, that, the people who were involved in the creation the idea of church kind of used that to their advantage. It was like, that it's an assumption of mine, but it's like, if we build these massive structures, we know the feeling it invokes, and then we can use that to kind of, I don't want to use the typical analogy, but herd the people, and just say that, oh, this is this feeling that you're getting in here. It's the feeling of the Holy Spirit, this and that, and just whatever.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot, and even so, with a lot of organized religions, how they get that feeling. It's like, especially even if it's not a grand place, but if you have a lot of people in one small location, all almost saying or chanting the same thing or singing the same thing, it causes a rise of emotion. It doesn't even need to be a grand place. It's just almost like, because we're social primates, we want to be with a group of people thinking the same way. And when you get that, and church provides that, or any other, we keep saying, like any other organized religion provides that. And I feel like that can be a driving force to having those quote unquote Holy Spirit feelings.
Yeah, for sure.
But going back a little bit, like when you talk about the energy with the atoms and how everything has this kind of vibrating energy to it, and
interconnectivity also.
Interconnectivity, yeah. So, I've been kind of toying with this concept in my mind, and maybe there isn't. Yeah, maybe there isn't a God or the devil, right? There's always this like duality that people have.
Right.
God, then there's the devil. And like in my mind, I don't know, maybe you'd agree with this. I was going to ask if you think that there's a God, an ultimate creator, or if there's just kind of the spiritual realm where we take these positive attributes, love, peace, kindness, compassion, humility, all these great characteristics, and we just kind of personify them onto a God. We say this represents God, these attributes, and God is all these good things. And there's an ultimate creator, and we like to think that there's an ultimate being out there that just is all those great emotions that we see around us every day. And then there's the evil side, hatred, anger, greed, whatever it may be, lying, cheating, whatever it may be. And we personify that and put that onto the devil, or whatever the devil may be in any other religion. Whereas it's more like us and the way that we are acting and treating each other, but like by personifying them and putting them onto these entities, it's almost like, in a weird way, separating us from certain things, where it's like because we're doing these bad things, it's the devil, or the devil's doing this, where it's like, no, this is within us. Like we have this, I always feel that the sign of morality and someone who's like an ethical person is like someone who recognizes that they're capable of immense amount of evil, that they don't point to other people and say, that person's evil, I would never do that. But they say, no, I'm capable of doing what they're doing, but I like try to choose the right path, and I try to make the right choices every day, rather than being like, oh no, that's the devil on them or something. I don't know. I don't know how. What do you think about that? Do you think there is a God? Do you think it's just kind of the spiritual realm that we are just kind of taking these good things, bad things, putting them on some foreign entity?
No, it's a great thing because it's something I, thought about a lot, and I don't even know if we were recording when we were talking earlier about the whole what your 20s is like and everything, and I feel like as I approached and passed 30, stuff started to fall into place just as far as understanding, and part of understanding is that you're never going to understand it all, and ever, at least in this plane of existence, as a
and I don't want to. I hope that there's always a mystery. That's the thing.
Well, exactly, and the part of understanding is like just going with it. But I love, but what you said about like dualities, I think it's such an off approach. I think it's such an incorrect approach to anything, especially you see it today. It's rampant, say like in politics and I mean, really anything you could say, oh, well, there's two sides, and it's always just, presented as, the extreme two sides, and it's like you said, just dualities and opposing whatever. And I think it's just such the wrong way to approach stuff. So, when it comes to the idea of God, God, as far as religion presents, and that maybe this is the first dun dun dun, the first moment where I disagree with religion's presentation. I don't see God as the all good, and I don't see God as the all bad. I don't see devil as the all bad. I see my idea of God is more of like the picture, like a yin yang, which I've been corrected in the past by a friend, so I feel pressured to say yang as opposed to yang. But God to me is like the yin yang, and the light is just as dependent on the dark as the dark is dependent on the light in order to create the whole. And you need both simply for the aspect of balance and
the yin yang is supposed to represent us, right? That's not a deity. I'm a little hazy on
no.
that.
I mean the yin yang, from what I mean from the little bit I'm not well versed on the Eastern philosophy of it, but I think the yin is the lighter, the white, the light of life, and then the yang is the darkness. But again, the yang, like, it doesn't represent evil or bad. Like the darkness, I believe, is the femininity, the feminine side of things, where the yin is the male. Again, don't mark my words. You'd have to do so, or I can look into it again. But I think it's like the yang's the feminine due to the darkness, like the concept of the womb, stuff like that. And then the yin is like when you're out of the womb, and again, you'd have to read into it, but yeah, it doesn't really represent us. It represents the kind of the light and the darkness, the good and the bad, these dualities kind of thing. But the way it presents it to me is how it makes sense. Like they're dependent on each other. They're not so separate, and really to a degree, the yin encompasses the yang, because there's part of the yang in the yin, and this is getting phonetically ridiculous now, but they're dependent and they're also within each other. So, and they wrap around each other. So as I've gotten older, it's the concept of the gray area, and like to me now at this point, there is no black and white. It's all a matter of degrees of gray. And so does your gray lean towards a darker? Does it lean towards a lighter gray? And it changes too. So, and I like when you said, the people who you feel you said something about just people who try their best and really, and I think you're right in that the people who really come off as being really good people probably are the ones who recognize that they are so capable of doing, equally bad, I think that's very true. I think the people who really just force themselves to be quote unquote good end up being more the opposite. That's an interesting thing, but yeah, the whole, basically, to sum up, like, the whole, yeah, it, to me, it's the yin yang is like my picture of God. It's all encompassing. And we talked about, I'm kind of take the, as of right now in my life, the pantheist approach, that it's in everything, and that the good and evil, the light and the dark, it's in everything. It's just a matter of to what degree is each there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Going a little bit back, it's like I think that the black and white thinking is very common, and I see it in the family that I grew up in.
And to me, it's just so limiting to
Yeah.
look at things that way. It's because if you say there's just black and there's just white, it's like, well, it's so minimal, when you consider then the degrees of gray which you could have when it comes to the combinations. The possibilities are endless, which to me is more realistic, because the universe existence, it's everything. It's everything that's there. It's not just two things. It's, so it to you have to mix it and realize that all the degrees of gray in between, they're endless, and that lines more up with reality, for me at least.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. It's just I think that the existing in the gray is frightening, which we don't like chaos. We want things in order. We want things in their boxes.
No, it's exciting.
I know. Well, yeah, no, I find it exciting too, but I can understand why it's frightening for a lot of people because people want everything organized. This is right. This is wrong. They want things, you know.
People. I guess that's people who aren't really still sound with or within themselves. I
I'm
think.
using my parents as an example, so be careful, Mike. I mean,
Well, what do you mean?
I'm using
What
them
do you
because
mean?
I think that they're very much. I think that, well, I think my mother specifically really clings on to her faith, and she's a very black and white thinker, and so is my father as well. And I've talked about this on the podcast. Sorry, mom and dad, but like, it's just, I find them to be very, very black and white thinking, and when you try and like interject and put things that go against what the way that they think or the way that they've kind of built their idea of the world and the afterlife and whatever it may be and
Hmm.
religion. When you start poking holes in that and what about this, what about that, it's just kind of brushed off as well, and it tends to be like that's abnormal, so it's bad. And kind of what you're saying is like kind of, when you talked about how people that strive to be good, and I think my parents are very humble people. I don't think they're holier than thou types of people. I think that they really do strive to do good. But when you have this black and white thinking, what happens is that you end up having negative characteristics and evil. I don't want to say evil, but like the bad creeps in anyway, because then you start judging people and then you start putting them down in their lifestyle or just you cause like hatred or resentment. I don't want to use hatred in regards to my parents because I don't think my parents hate anyone, but you know what I mean. I think that a lot of people can fall into that trap when you have that kind of black and white thinking. But I definitely think that when I try to poke holes in their ideologies or try and make them think a different way, there's definitely a defensive pushback to
Right.
it. Kind of
Yeah.
this, we have this down. This is the way it's supposed to be. This is right. This is wrong. I feel like that gives a lot of comfort to a lot of people. Now, I don't want to accept that. I don't think, and I don't know, like,
Right.
yeah.
We've talked about this before, though. We've talked. I remember we were sitting out back of Uncle Jeff's house, the one soup party. We were talking about that, and you also have to consider and respect the fact that another person is at their own point in life and their own place in life. And if, especially when it comes to people who are, older, be it 2 years older than you or 40 years older than you, you have to respect, or even younger, you have to respect where they're at with their outlook on, if we're talking about, faith and spirituality, you have to just respect where they're, and so if they have thoughts, ideas, and concepts which makes them feel sound and grounded and secure, all the above, and just as opposed to look at the specifics of what makes them feel that way, just understand that they feel sound and secure within their ideologies that they believe in. And as opposed to, want to, poke holes in it or this and that, I think from an outsider's point of view, I think, it seems, I would say that you grew up obviously with them presenting their ideologies to you. And I think the whole you poking holes in their stuff is really you poking holes in it for yourself. Like you're doing it to yourself in a way, as opposed to them, because they're good. And like clearly, like they tell you, it's like, well, this is how I feel. This is, and that's how, and I remember, what we're talking about was like, just, if you just accept that and then just, look at it as you're really just trying to poke holes for yourself, which means that you need a little more or just a little different. Yeah, more just different, not more, because I'm sure they're very content with their level of faith and spirituality, but you just need something a little different to, reach the level of secureness which they feel within their faith. That's kind of what I think it is, And really, in my mind, everybody's entitled to think whatever it is they want to think in regards to that stuff. And I think one of the biggest things is that as long as you don't intend on harming someone or trying to bring them down, you're allowed to think and feel whatever you want, as long as it makes you feel sound and secure. That's so like when it comes to specifically you talking to your parents, it's like they're probably just pretty sound in what they feel, and they don't really need alternate angles because all their pieces have kind of fallen into place. And they have a sound structure, they have a solid foundation and building, structure of faith, spirituality, and they're good. They don't need tweaking, they don't need adjustments, they don't need additions, they don't need demolition, none of that.
Wow, man, this is like a therapy session right now. No, it's good. It's good. Because I didn't even think about that. This whole time I'm seeing it as because I guess I'm someone in my mind. I hope that I don't get to a point where, or maybe I do want to be at a point. I just don't realize it now, where I feel totally content in what I believe, and I don't want to tweak anything. I always feel like I should be constantly challenging what I think and the way I view things. But maybe you're right. Maybe I'll get to a point later on in my life where I feel content.
You do, and that comes with time, because like I said, like we were just talking earlier, I guess I'm 4 years older than you. So it's like sometimes I've had the outlook of, I always want to challenge myself and push myself. And I used to adopt the outlook, well, it's never good enough. But eventually that gets old, And you get tired of it, you get tired of looking at stuff as like, well, it's not good enough, it could be better, because then I just got to the point where I just want to look at it as it is good and just have faith in that it will get better. But for now, I just want to enjoy it, because you almost are welcoming this state of, not enjoying things, because you're looking at everything as if it could be better. And again, there's dualities. There's no right and wrong in that, but it's bound to evolve and it's bound to change, your outlook on things. So a lot of it just comes with time too.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. So what you're saying is that certain, first of all, that's good to hear. I really like that, because I feel like I've been kind of feeling that I don't know if I want to say soul, which is a whole nother discussion. It's like, what is a soul, and who really has it, or
Mm-hmm.
If there is a soul, what does it look like? But that's a whole other. I'm going to say soul. I'm going to use that word for right now. My gut, my chest, or whatever.
Your spirit,
but my spirit,
mind, body, and spirit.
Spirit, definitely. I guess I was kind of feeling that idea of like, man, nothing's ever going to be good enough, and I always have to be striving for something better. And it almost seemed like a hopeless task. It almost seemed like task.
Definitely, yeah. You end up feeling empty almost.
Definitely, and like defeat. I mean, constant feeling of defeat. That it's just like okay, I
Yeah.
mean, what's the point of striving towards something if I hit that, there's just gonna be something else to strive towards. Rather than like maybe putting roots down and being like, okay, I feel comfortable at this, I feel comfortable at that. And I'm starting to develop that in certain areas of my life, or at least that I'm putting on certain I'm gonna say articles of clothing that I feel comfortable with wearing right now, but but you outgrow clothing, of course. So like what you're saying is that no matter where someone's at, it's not really there's nothing objectively wrong, which is actually another question I was going to ask about, universal morality, or like what makes a good person, or a bad person, which is like, once again, there's a gray area, so we kind of discussed that, but it's
Right.
not really like
Yeah, we
it's
could go
right
into that
or
though.
wrong. Yeah, it's not really. Let me just finish this point. But it's
Yeah.
it's not what you're saying. It's not right or wrong. It's so much as you're just at a different area of your life, and you'll kind of hopefully you'll grow out of that. I feel like there is always going to be a process of changing a little bits, but like I feel like the grand changes that you make is between probably like, I don't know, I guess maybe 16 to 30 or something like that, where I feel like you're going through the greatest amount of change. And like probably the most of that happens in your 20s, kind of like what we talked about. And then probably in your 30s, you really start to kind of put down roots. And then maybe it's smaller tweaks throughout. But I don't know. I guess what you're saying is that there's nothing wrong. It's
Yeah, because the idea of right and
however
wrong
you're
is the
thinking.
duality thing.
Yeah. But like the way that you're thinking, or however someone who's listening right now is thinking, or the way that I'm thinking right now, is not necessarily wrong. It's just really where I'm at this moment in my life. It's almost like a neutral idea. It's just like, yeah, this is just what I'm thinking right now. And it'll progress when it's supposed to progress and how it's supposed to progress. It's a very passive view of changing and
Right, right.
evolving. Is that kind of the
Yeah,
way
and I
you
think the
take it?
more you try
Okay.
to actively invoke change, I think you're really just going to kind of drain yourself, as opposed to just let it happen. The change will happen, it's bound to. And the more you try to influence the change, just no thanks, just the crazier things get. You're just making unnecessary waves.
And you've been at that point in your life where you were trying to force change, like you felt like I need to change something, and I'm going to kind of force it, and like,
Yeah, yeah. I think everybody goes through that, because I think it's an ego thing, and you're gonna have a point in life where you're gonna try to paint the universe or reality and existence the way you think it ought to be, and that's not how it works at all. You're just a little part of it.
yeah, no, I definitely think that that's interesting, and that's kind of a concept that I've been trying to adopt and really settle into my brain recently. Kind of a little bit. It's kind of been attached to my view, my vegetarian views. But this idea that like we have to kind of be moving away from like a human centric view of the world, because I feel like for a lot of your life you kind of view humans, and you specifically, as being some really important component of this universe, whereas at some point you kind of have to be like, no, we're all just kind of in this, and the universe is kind of going, and we're kind of along for the ride. Kind of like how much we can influence is at a pretty small level.
Right, right.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting to me. That's definitely interesting. Something that I've been trying to work through in my mind. But yeah, let's touch upon a little bit. What do you think about the goodness of humanity? I mean, I know that's kind of a broad. I know that's a broad topic. The Hobbes and Rousseau kind of idea, where it's Hobbes is. I think Hobbes is the one. I may get these switched up, but I believe Hobbes is the one that thinks that humans are naturally bad, and we need society and I guess religion and everything to give us a baseline. And then Rousseau kind of says that no, we're good. But I guess that's once again, that's the duality that we're falling into, and not everything's good or bad. And
Yeah, and I think
um,
Yeah, I think that's kind of, at this point, to me, that's just an outdated way of looking at things. I don't, I used to look at, the world, or, my life in that way, and I would compartmentalize things, on based on good or bad. Which jar are you going to put it in? And it's exhausting doing that, because as you live life, you start to see these things that you might have put in the bad jar. It keeps popping up, and sometimes it pops up in a scenario that feels good, and it can be very confusing. And that's the whole good and bad thing. I've kind of tossed it out the window, I guess in recent years, because, like I said, it's exhausting being concerned with good bad. I think it's my angle, and as a musician, I kind of use the analogy with music. When it's, to me, it's either stuff is either harmonious or dissonant, and that's not to say it's good or bad. It's stuff is either vibrating at frequencies that are proportional to each other and they fit in really well together, or stuff is vibrating at frequencies which it's not proportional, and it doesn't fit well together. It's like, trying to jam two puzzle pieces together that just don't fit, and it's not that it's bad, and I don't even want to say that it's not wrong either, because if you're doing a puzzle, it's like, well, that's the wrong piece, but it's just the wrong piece for that spot. It's not to say it's the wrong piece, so it's a matter of just finding good fits as you go through life, and you feel it, and you feel the vibration of it, and like I said, it's either vibrating harmoniously or in a dissonant sense. And I don't look at it as good or bad, because if we're going to talk about people, I really don't feel like there's bad people, and that's not to say that there's no good people. Are just people, and people either fit together or they don't, and that doesn't mean that, if just because there's a bad fit at some point, we'll just remove remove the pieces, have them, don't stop trying to cram them together, and shove that piece into play. Just go separate ways and find the pieces that do fit, and that's kind of how I look at people, So if, I could cross paths with somebody who you get that sense of, and time is an amazing thing too, because there could be somebody who you cross paths with where it just hasn't been fitting. It hasn't been fitting, but change is inevitable. So time can bring forth change within two entities where at one point in time it didn't fit. But people aren't exactly like puzzle pieces. People change. We do change, and there could be a point in the future or where the people do fit. So it's, if and I don't even really cross paths with people where I feel like, oh, this isn't going to be a good fit, because I'm just going to treat them as well as I can, and it's either going to carry out and prolong, or it could just be a quick interaction of, hey, how are you, and that's that, and it ends there. Why? Because I feel like, why would I, if I feel this whatever sense of dissonance between me and another person, why would I, want to shed light on that? It's just, if it really feels off, just go the other way for now. And it's not due to judgment. It's not due to good, bad. It's not due to right and wrong. It's, personally, I feel like anyone wants to feel harmony within themselves and between themselves and other people. So that's how I look at people, and I also really strongly believe that there can be harmony between everybody, anyone and everyone, and it's just a matter of place and time. That's all.
Wow, yeah. I think that would go against the norm of the normal thinking of this day. This idea that I think it's very easy to say that these people are evil, or that these people are good. It's very easy to say. I mean, once again, we're talking about duality and everything, which is prevalent throughout all of societies. But yeah, it's a good way of looking at things for sure. Yeah, because I think that we had this discussion that you really opened up my mind to this may be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. The idea that terrorists, we see them as purely evil, but in their mind, they're doing something good. I think that really opened up my mind when you start thinking about it like that. And I think you were the one that actually introduced that to me, that idea of thinking.
Right. I mean, and I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna defend. I don't want to defend terrorist acts, but at the same time, you have this word, right? Terrorist. Okay, the word, what it encompasses, yeah, like I'm probably not with that idea, but at the same time, what is that? Are you going to say it's anybody who has? I don't even want to start rattling off stereotypes because it's just words and it's these stories and it's how they're presented to us and it creates these concepts in our mind which we start stamping on people or countries or religions or and it just seems a little bit off the mark to me. And I'm not saying, oh, we shouldn't, but it's like, why, let's not be so quick to judge, and really, to me, the root of the word, terrorist or terrorist act is consciously inflicting harm upon, another's life or an act of trying to take another person's life or soul, if you will, and I'm not okay with that, that I'm not okay with. So once somebody does that, then that changes, so once it's the whole idea of action, once somebody takes that action, well then you can, kind of label or judge, or they just fell further into a jar, if you will, of, yeah, you did something bad. You intended to do some harm to other. I don't want to say bad. I'm trying to stay away from the duality terms, but you intended to do harm to somebody else, and that's not, to me, that's not a good thing, So, but before anybody does anything, who's who to say, who or what is a terrorist? Or to me, the only terrorist or terrorism is something, that's already been done by somebody. And I think any human struggles with thoughts as far as, yeah, what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, and then you have the duality kind of, which is parallel to the tribalism aspect of things. And if you feel like you're part of a tribe, and you be it whether the tribe identifies an opposing tribe or whether you find an opposing tribe, people are apt to struggle with thoughts of, how do I approach this opposing thing? Do I try to erase it from existence and decimate it, or do I try to accept it? And I think it's a struggle for anybody. And some people decide to take action along the lines of, trying to cause harm to it or erase it and decimate it. And that, that's where I'm not okay with it. But, if there's somebody wherever on the world thinking what they're thinking, you don't know if they're, thinking that you're good or bad or an enemy or, it's all just thoughts at that point, and that I feel like nowadays we're so quick to debate and argue with one another over ideas, and simply that, just ideas. And that's all it is. And I think if you could just sit and talk about it, you could almost, not erase, but really diminish the idea of something terrible, be it, well, for your example, terrorism or terrorists, you could, through conversation, I really diminish it and just not give it so much weight. But the way it is now, with how media covers it, there's so much weight put into it, and really, it's just, yeah, I don't know. I'm not so quick to, just define something as good, bad, and stand firm on that belief because I believe in, constant change and ever-present change. And I just, my thing is like, well, there's nothing also wrong with taking a step back and having faith in change towards the positive light of things.
And when you say discussion, you mean discussion with the people that are quote unquote terrorists, or are you talking about discussion just around the idea of the evil? I mean, what I'm using, I'm saying on the topic
I don't even
right now. Terrorism, but it could be anything. But like,
right, exactly. I mean, and the topic, I don't even like the topic of it because I feel like when you talk about it, you're shedding light on it, and it's just something that I don't want to shed light on. But there are what we call radical extremists, and I'm not relating that to a certain religion, because there's radical extremists within every religion, and there's radical extremists who aren't even religious.
That's true.
It's just that they're radical extremists, and they could be next door to you. They could be halfway around the world. They could be anywhere. It's an idea, an approach at life, and they're just people who would go to extreme measures to get a point across. And for me, once they start intentionally bringing harm to other people and intentionally trying to, it's a horrible thought, but, kill people for an idea, that's just so off the mark. I think they're just so misguided and it's not rooted in any one religion or anything. It's just a human possibility. And I think the possibility is rare, luckily, and maybe at another point in time it was more prevalent, be it during the Dark Ages. I don't know, was that more the plague, or was that also because of war and stuff,
I think there was a lot of stuff going on.
And I like to believe that is getting eradicated from the human psyche. Obviously it's still there, but I don't think it has anything to do with someone's religion or where they're from. It's just it's an ideology that any human is susceptible to, and it just, for some people, it just takes root more than it does others, and it's a terrible thing to accept, but I think you have to accept it, and I think it is possible to eradicate it from people, and I think it just comes through discussion and also just realizing that we are all just the same thing. We're all just human beings, and we should try to uplift one another as opposed to diminish one another and put others down. There's so much to be gained from sharing in an uplifting experience as opposed to because it invokes good vibrations within ourselves and the people around us when we're sharing those experiences, as opposed to trying to overcome somebody else or another group of people. I think most people could agree that it invokes these like off vibrations, these dissonant vibrations within us. And some people, that's, somebody's born into those feelings. It's all they ever know, and I've seen it in my life where, some people who are just so used to that dissonant vibration, when they start to feel, harmony, and be it one, whatever you want to call it, love, or just smiling and laughing, that's very foreign to some people. And so they approach that as, an enemy. But you're going into psychology of stuff because it might invoke stuff like envy and stuff like that. But like I said, it's just, I don't want to label or judge anything because it's just exhausting. I'm just going to try to be open to anybody and anything and try to accept it for what it is. And if it rings true and if it vibrates through me in a good way, well, obviously, I'm going to want to keep myself around it. And if it doesn't vibrate in a good way with me, I'm just going to turn and walk the other way, because I have that choice, to react to it that way, And I think that's really the only choice we have in life is how are we going to react to things. And when it comes to dissonance is, well, some people like to just dive right in, you know, and elevate, a bad, an argument, if you will, or whereas I'll just go the other way, and I'm not going to say that you're right or wrong or good or bad. I just don't want to get involved.
No, I got you. Yeah, no, I completely agree that there's a lot of people that are just confrontational people that seem to thrive, or at least I don't know if someone can thrive, but they seem to enjoy being in that place, that area of dissonance, as you said.
Right, and like I said, you never know where somebody comes from. A child can't choose the parents. They can't choose the setting that they're born into. So you never know what a person's life has been. If you meet somebody it doesn't matter how old they are, they've had a lot of time and experiences, prior to you encountering them. You never know what those experiences encompass. So there could be people who they're only used to, just what another person would say is, dissonant or bad or, combative. And, to them, that's their norm. And, we're all entitled to find our place and find what makes us comfortable. And for some people, I mean, conflict and, combat, it's their norm. So it's, but for me personally, it's like, have at it. I'll be over here kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that definitely. And I think the communication is really important. And I think that, like what you said, I think the upbringing and what they've been exposed to, lack of education, I think is a very key component of, and like just like living condition in general, I feel like really influences whether it becomes thoughts or then someone brings it to action where they intend to harm other people. I think that has a lot to do with I think it's like a combination of communication, education, and just like upbringing, that maybe they don't feel heard, they're not educated, they don't understand, or their upbringing, they just feel like they're in a desolate situation where they need to act out. But before we're gonna move on, and but I just find it interesting that you're right. There is extremism in everywhere, like everywhere, in every country, and but I think that it has the potential to be anywhere, and I think it is present to, once again, certain degrees everywhere. Though, I mean, we can point to Christian fundamental extremism here in the United States, whether that be the KKK. They're they consider themselves a religious organization. Maybe they may not classify themselves as such, but they really do think that they have it's their the white race is somehow divine, like been ordained to be above other races. So I don't know. There is like a religious aspect to that. But it's just interesting because it goes back to this. You have to recognize that we are all capable of immense evil, and there's even maybe a little bit of that in a little bit of, like, we look at, we point to terrorists overseas and we say, oh, that's totally evil, what's going on in Syria, which is terrible and absolutely disgusting and egregious. But to recognize, like, wow, we have that fundamental nature inside of us too, and it's not manifesting itself as extreme as it is over there, but it's still there. It still can be there, and we're still capable of it to a certain extent. And being able to recognize that, I think is important. I think it's important to do. So let me just organize. Wow, we covered a lot. So do you think that faith, and more specifically organized religion, has value in the world and has purpose to society and moving forward? Or do you think organized religion, I think more specifically organized religion, because I think that spirituality and everything, I think that, I don't know if we can label that it has value. I think it's just a component of life. Just like, we look at any physical aspect of life, and it's just is part of the experience of living on this earth. And I feel like a spiritual, like diving into something spiritual or having spiritual thoughts or spiritual experiences is just like an aspect of existing. So, do you think that organized religion has a purpose? Because there's a lot of people that would say that they're anti-theists, that they think that religion actually has kind of a negative has contributed negatively to the world, which I can understand what they mean by that.
Right.
So yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I think, organized religion I think it has a place because, like, for me personally, like I said, that was the start of me understanding the idea of morals and values and how to treat people. But as I've gotten older and I look at the world, organized religion is very apt to create that tribal feeling because, and I grew up as a, Roman Catholic, Christian, and it's, oh, we're inviting of everybody. But really, if you take it further, it's like we're inviting of everybody as long as you come to this side, as long as you sit in this building, But it's like, well, and that it create, even though it is a peaceful presentation, it still creates this idea of opposition because, yeah, you're welcome to come because you're not in it now, or so I don't like the idea of how it can create, like I said, yeah, that tribal angle on things because of opposition. I mean, for me personally, I mean, the word God and the word Allah, it's synonymous. It's the same thing, and I'm not going to judge one or the other because of what religion it's rooted from. It's the same idea, and I think we're with organized religion and thinking that one is better than the other. I think it's just a bit of a mistake on humans' part, and I think that's just the point we're at in history is all. I think I'd like to see humans as just that, humans. So I think I just try to look at people as one group. We really are all in it together. And I just feel like we're at a point in history where, and so much goes into it, we also never were at a point in history where there was 7 billion people on this planet with the internet and having the capability to all connect and understand that there's, it used to be that it was way less people and we were separated by just geography, period, let alone ideologies and philosophies and stuff like that, so were we mistaken to look at some other group as a threat? Well, no, that's just part of being a human, anything new can be very intimidating and very scary, and because it's new and it's unknown and you don't know the level of darkness that's in it. And some people are quick to assume that it's all darkness and it's not good, it's bad, and it's as opposed to just give it however much time it needs, to just slowly integrate. And so religion, it can be great, yeah, sure. It's like I said, for me, it started the teachings of morals and values and how to approach life and people in a beneficial manner, in a peaceful manner. But I don't like the idea of how it can also be segregating, because and now I obviously the religion would counter, well, no, we're all inclusive, anybody's welcome, but they're only welcome if they're gonna agree with your religion. So and I think people are. I really believe that we're experiencing just a fusion of humanity right now. I truly believe that, and I think it's just a matter of time before people realize that everyone has this spiritual side to them. Some people it's to a large degree, some people it's to a small degree, but we all have it. And let's not compartmentalize it. Let's not segregate it. Let's not say that this is the way, let's just look at it as, we all have this spiritual side, and it's just part of us. And I think we use religion to kind of, I think really the human experience, I think we use religion to help us with the fear of the unknown, because it kind of revolves around this, the spirit. And I think we don't fully understand the spirit. We don't know what happens when we die, so I think a lot of it is revolved around that. We use religion to give us comfort with the unknown of things, be it death or just other aspects of life. And when we find comfort through, say, religion, I think people make the mistake of saying, well, it has to be through this religion. I don't think it has to be through any religion. I think we all have, like I said, the spiritual side, and we all have these innate fears and unknowns, and we just need to realize that, it's just that we all have it. So let's see what this person's take is, or this religion's take, and let's just continue to fuse ideas and angles and philosophies to get a more all-encompassing view on reality and just existence and our human experience. So, organized religion, it has benefits, and I believe it has downsides as well. And I think we just need to learn from, organized religion, the existence of it, learn from it, and just kind of take the good things of it and just see if we can, and that's what humans do. We like to tweak things. We like to evolve. We like to push for better, and maybe not better, but just more efficient, whatever it is. And let's, I think, we could do that with religion. And just, accept what one person feels. And if that, again, like we were talking about earlier with your parents, if somebody feels sound, be like, okay, cool, you're good then, and what is it that makes you feel sound? Because maybe I can use some of that for myself, and maybe not, Either way, though, it's not good or bad.
I know. Yeah, I don't know. Right now, at this point in my life, Mike, before you start getting annoyed with me, right now, at this point in my life, that idea rubs me the wrong way, because I really feel like it's like, okay, you may feel comfortable in what you believe, but if it's wrong, if it's wrong, it should be challenged. It shouldn't be like, okay, that's fine. Then
how can I say it's wrong? Who's to say it's wrong? If it makes somebody feel good, and like I said, with you saying that, I feel like you're at a point where you're trying to cram two puzzle pieces together that don't fit. So just separate them, move them to different parts of the table, and let other pieces fall into place. And then you'll realize that you were just trying to cram the wrong pieces together. And that's not to say that the one piece doesn't belong. It just belongs in a different spot to where it falls into the big picture in the way it's supposed to fall into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not only speaking specifically about my parents, or I'm just talking in general, that it's like this idea to not question or to not like push back. I'm not saying push back in a bad way. I mean, the whole point of this podcast is to open up the conversation to people to absorb different beliefs and accept them, but also like it's okay to maybe ask some questions that may be challenging. I don't see.
But I think you're really just doing that for yourself, which is a good thing. I think there's something in you which recognizes you need to be questioning things and doubting things, and I think in your mind you're questioning things outside of you without realizing that you're really questioning things, within you. And I say that only because I kind of gone through it to a certain extent. When you're constantly questioning stuff and not you're taking everything with a grain of salt and this and that. I think it's reflective of that. There's something internal that's not stable. That's not. Yeah, and just not. I think you're just building a foundation still. You're looking for something very solid and firm to then build upon, and and I think the questioning process is just that. It's a process, and it's part of the process of building a foundation.
So what you're saying is that me doing this podcast is perfect then.
It's exactly, yeah. And you even said it earlier, like you've come so far in the last year of doing it that and from where I sit, it makes complete sense because it was an area of your life which there was so much uncertainty, and through talking about it and through hearing many different angles on things, you're able to move around and shift your perspective. And the more you do that, the more likely it is you'll find an angle and a perspective where you're like, wow, this really resonates with me. It really vibrates with me. It's, that concept of harmony. And this is me, So it's an interesting thought of how we build ourselves through experiencing and whatever, but experiencing things outside of ourselves. It's through experiencing things outside of ourselves that we build ourselves, and we do it with not just religion and spirituality. We do it with clothes, music, food, everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love that idea of the cramming of the puzzle piece, and I guess the wardrobe, the putting on the clothes too. But I feel like it's more. I like your idea of cramming the puzzle piece more because I feel like trying on clothes is a little bit too passive. It was like the process that I've been going through, and you definitely experienced this in your 20s, where I felt like I was trying to force things into place, where it's like, this seems like it makes sense, but it's just not jiving with me. I'm just not feeling it, but like I want to, and I'm going to try to adopt this. I'm going to try to fit this in. And then eventually it's just like, this is definitely not working out and I have to put this away and I got to accept that.
Right. And yeah. And like I said, I think it's an ego thing. And I think it's something everybody goes through. Like we were talking, I told you it was Socrates who had the quote of, this isn't verbatim, but we've talked about, where he said something like, once you reach 70 years old, you're finally freed from the prison of your libido. And he said that obviously from a male's perspective, but I think it rings true for anybody. Everybody has a libido, this and that, but going through life, I kind of look at it as, once you get out of your 20s, you can finally exit the prison of your ego, because the ego is telling you that you're right. Your perspective is how it is and how reality is. And you get frustrated because, the all-encompassing universe, it is through your 20s. It's just like, no, you're wrong. That is not how it works. It's not you. It's not your perspective. And you probably just haven't built your perspective yet, because I think a healthy perspective is to just realize that, you're just a little part, just a little cog within this grand machinery of existence.
How depressing. My mother said I was special. Come on.
No, it's not depressing at all. There's so much beauty in that, it's such an incredible machine, it's such an incredible thing. And it's to think that there's such balance between so many different components, but at the same time, every single component is just part of this one, this singularity. And to me, that's the God. That's where God lies. It's the full equation with all of the factors and all of the coefficients, all of the exponents, whatever it is, I mean, it's an equation that runs on for who knows. Maybe it's still growing. I mean, they say the universe is still expanding, so maybe there's new factors that come in every day, and maybe there's other factors that get canceled out every day. But it's ever changing, and it's a really big equation. But we as people, we're just this little tiny factor, and I think the 20s is where you think your factor should be just the complete side of the equation, or maybe just the whole equation in itself, and it doesn't work that way. You're just this little part.
Oh man, I just lost my train of thought. Giving me too much
well, your mom told you were special. You could go on with that.
No,
and you are. Everybody is. We're all unique.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Come on, give me some compliments. It is my birthday after all. Today's my birthday.
No, you are. I mean, everyone's special, because we all are unique, and we're all our own individuals, and we all have our unique place and purpose, and it's all equal too. It's just a matter of, where we are and what our each individual angle is, because all the angles together, make the whole pie, if you will,
I definitely agree with you. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot more about, kind of the afterlife. And I don't know if we should even get into a whole discussion about the afterlife and what happens after death. But this idea, the idea, I don't think I'll ever be able to subscribe to one religion. And I don't think you'd be able to either, obviously, just because I don't think there's one path to nirvana or whatever the afterlife may be. I think it's everybody carving out their own path and figuring out what kind of works with their soul, their personality, what makes them harmonious, what where they find those vibrations and how those vibrations line up with their vibrations. I mean, that's the concept that Steve Judd talked about. He was the astrologer who he was the one that kind of talked about your purpose on Earth is to increase this to have the energy wave or the vibrations of the Earth in more of a to bring it into a more of a positive area, to just move it a little bit into more of a positive area. And I think that's kind of what our job is right now. And there's different paths to get there, and different there's not one path that fits all. Obviously, I just can't imagine that would be the case. But yeah, I mean, that kind of goes into what you were just talking about how okay, those people, they found something that worked for them. They feel harmonious. Their vibrations seem to be, in line, and they seem to be synchronized in themselves. So that's good. That's good. And it should be left at that. Let me just ask you, was you're a guest, and I always ask guests, actually one more question before we get into the last one quickly. What purpose do you think drives us as a society? I'd be curious. Do you think it's a spiritual, religious drive that pushes us, or do you think it's kind of a strive for, I don't know, technology or some sort of what do you think drives us?
I think it's just the human experience in general.
Just the human experience.
That's what, we just strive. That's what we do. Because the idea of that is just, you then are never stagnant. Nothing's ever still. Nothing's ever completely, it's all in motion always, as are we. And that feeling of striving kind of just falls in nicely with the concept of, the progression of time, the blossoming of time, and the ever changing existence, and yeah. So it's just, I think that's just what we do. We just strive for more, for better, although you got to be careful with that, the whole, I want better, I think it's just, yeah, I think I've just come to realize that that's just what we do. We just strive.
Got it. Got it. It's just part of the human experience. Okay.
And growth,
I like
yeah.
that. Yeah, and growth. Okay. And then last question: is there anything? Because I asked this to all guests, so I'm going to ask you too. Is there anything right now that you would suggest to people to adopt in their life, easy to adopt into their life from your own belief system that you think they could benefit from? I know that's like yeah, whatever it may be, maybe just a way of living, a concept that you have, or anything at all.
I don't know. Always believe in the potential that, and maybe not even potential, but maybe it is the fact that, always believe in that somebody else probably, well, they have just as much to bring to the table as you do, if not more. If not more. And if it's less, then it's up to you to fulfill them and provide them. And if you start to sense that somebody has more than you, well, you just open yourself up and realize that you're just not as, far along as they are or developed as they are, so just go with it. Don't be so, just kind of take, the ego thing. I think there's a lot to benefit, from diminishing the ego and from just putting it up on a shelf. And I think it then opens you up, and you're able to just accept, and there's so much, I think, peace that comes from acceptance, and a good tool for that process is to, and don't be hard on yourself. Don't put yourself down in the dumps, but just it's all about sharing and the group experience, and you can really, really experience personal joy through being open to others and other people's angles, and it's just having experiences with others. And that's I think that's such a beneficial tool to have, just the understanding that, like, you're not all that in a bag of chips. Life is going to be so much better if you open up to others, and it could be anybody, and it could be everybody. Who knows? But it could be anybody at any place in time. Just be open to them, and don't jump to conclusions and assumptions and judgments. Just be open and accept, and you probably get so many gifts from sometimes the most, what you would have assumed was, like, you would never get something from, you could get so much from such unexpected places. So always just be, open. Yeah, because I think if you paint this picture of, I feel like I'm only going to get something from this well, you could be putting the bucket down endlessly in your life. Whereas if you just dug a hole 6 inches deep, 5 feet away, there could be a river flowing, so, just don't insist on tapping into one well, just be open to any and all possibilities. It's just, yeah. So I guess really it's just about, I guess, so if you said what benefits, just be open, just be open to anything and everything.
I like it. That's great. All right. Thanks.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm going to go and got some stuff on the agenda to do, but I'm glad that we had this discussion. I'm actually very glad that we had this discussion because it was really fantastic. And I am.
Yeah, no, and I think it's the first of many, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I'm glad that you are, are going to be joining me on this journey, and it should be exciting. So I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Without question.